Hey everyone, fascinating conversation today as we talk about why your marketing and sales outreach suck and how AI driven conversations can really be a game changer with drips. AC, how are you?
I'm good, Evan. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for joining. That's one of your taglines is your outreach sucks, pretty controversial and bold statement. Before that, maybe introduce yourself and drips. What's the big idea these days?
Yeah, myself, Aaron Christopher Evans. A lot of people call me AC. I'm a father. I'm a startup founder. Drips, my business now. I've been in it for about 11 years. Started in 2014. Really kind of pioneered the whole idea of conversational outreach. So, texting members and consumers essentially. What we're doing today is we're working with the biggest companies in the world to reach out to their members, to reach out to their prospects, all the big I shouldn't say all, a lot of the big healthcare payer, health insurance companies and the majority of the PNC insurance companies as well are working with Drips for their outreach efforts.
Fantastic. And why do you think traditional outreach is broken? I think many of us have our own personal experiences, but what's the big picture?
Yeah, thinking all the way back, right? I think it starts with, we have now become an on-demand society, right? So and I talked about this years and years ago when, Shopify and Spotify and Amazon and Netflix kind of became the norm, right? Like we all of a sudden are getting used to being able to pause live television, right? Get same day delivery, stream anything we want, right? Have unlimited, content at our fingertips. So long story short, no one is bored anymore, right? Back when we were bored, right? Back when you and I were growing up, the phone ringing was an exciting moment, right? It's like, oh my God, who is calling me, right? Because what were
When you
we
got an
doing?
email, we got an email, it was like a big deal. Everyone opened their email back in the day.
That's right, because we didn't have anything else to keep our attention, right? But now we are in about the opposite of that, right? Where everybody is busy 100% of the time doing whatever it is that they want to do, right? It doesn't necessarily mean they're productive busy. It just means they're busy, right? They could be busy scrolling on Instagram, and you bet they'd rather do that than to get a phone call about, doing a policy review with their auto insurance carrier. So that's what kind of shifted, psychology of people, right? Like commercials don't work, radio doesn't work, right? Phone calls aren't being picked up, direct mail is not being read, email is not being read. So all of these things have one thing in common, and is that they are trying to steal your attention. They're trying to stop you from doing what it is that you'd rather be doing and have you take some action, right? So if I call you, what are your options, right? You either have to stop what you're doing and deal with this phone call, or you ignore the phone call. And, long story short, people are ignoring that type of outreach. They're ignoring that type of push messaging that is trying to take their time.
Well said. So, at Drips, you're talking a lot about humanized AI, because we're all AI, Gen AI obsessed. So, what does that mean in practice, and how is it different from just your average chatbot experience?
Sure. Yeah. Again, the difference between what we like to call conversations and push messaging is we are reaching out and holding an asynchronous conversation, right? To hold a synchronous conversation, to get somebody on the phone, they have to stop what they're doing, right? We can ask a question. We can say, hey, Evan, we're following up about your annual wellness visit. Have you had time to schedule that yet? Question mark. You can respond then, you can
Mm.
respond later, you can respond the next day. If you don't respond within a certain amount of time, we can bump you and push you and say, hey, Evan, just making sure you got my message, right? Should we jump on a call? Can I help you? Did you have any questions about this? So I'm not taking your time, right? You can keep watching Netflix, you can keep working, you can keep watching your kids, you can do whatever you want. So that's the trick, so to speak, with conversations, right? Is that it's an asynchronous thing. So I'm giving people a voice that they can respond when they want to respond, right? And the interesting thing is they respond with all kinds of stuff, right? You all of a sudden learn that, the person doesn't want to pick up the medication because they're having an allergic reaction, or they can't pay their bill because they, got laid off, or they already picked up the prescription and, there's something wrong with the data. So by opening up and asking questions, you give these audiences a voice that they didn't have before, right? Because if you just keep calling them and they don't respond, you're not hearing what the problem really is, right? So that's kind of the trick, is to opening up conversations, listening people, giving them a voice. The hard part is it's hard to know what they're saying, right? So we've been doing, NLP and machine learning modeling for many years now. It's definitely easier now with LLM, ChatGPT, OpenAI, et cetera. We can get better accuracy. But the problem with generative for most companies is that it is probabilistic in nature, right? Which means it's probably going to do what you want it to do. It doesn't mean it's going to do what you want it to do. So we actually stay in a full deterministic model currently. We do use, NLP and LLMs to do intent mapping to figure out what the person said. So if they say, I'm driving, I'm stuck in traffic on I-77 South heading into the office, we know that doesn't mean I'm at work. It means I'm driving. So that we would then send the deterministic pre-prescribed response that says, oh, sorry, we caught you driving. Please drive safe. Let us know when you get to where you're going. Right. So the trick is, figuring out what they're saying so you can respond in kind. That way you don't have to sound like a chatbot, right? So the difference is with chatbots, it's, hey, Evan, it's time for your annual wellness visit. Respond C if you would like a call to confirm to blah, blah, blah. Respond R if you need to reschedule it. And you know what a human does when they feel like they're being talked to by a robot? They ignore it, right? They're like, yeah, I'll do this later. You know what I mean? Like it's the equivalent of getting a phone call and saying like, hello, this is Walgreens, or I won't use name. This is your pharmacy, right? It's not as empathetic, right? So, but if a person calls me or something that sounds like a person calls me or texts me, I'm going to have a little more empathy to hold a conversation.
Well said. Yeah, I don't even answer my phone anymore. So there goes that. But why do you think so many companies, even big companies, big brands with deep pockets and lots of tech in-house are so slow to evolve in this space? They're still using email blasts and text blasts and, outbound call centers. Why haven't they jumped on the Gen AI train?
It's a good question. Again, with Gen AI, there's a lot of risks, right? And there's a lot of
Mm,
uncertainty right now. So most big companies just don't want their data touching those models yet, right? Most large companies, they are, I would say, implementing AI. I was just with the CIOs of a large, one of the largest national health insurance companies. I asked them how they're implementing Gen AI, and they said they're actually focused on implementing it in-house, meaning for operations, right? Like getting it so that their teams are using these tools so that their company can be more efficient and more effective. That's a much safer and more obvious place to start with Gen AI than is using it to outreach to your audience in on regulated channels, right? So email is regulated, but it's relatively pretty safe, right? Direct mail, you pay for a stamp, you're covered under the law. Telephony, right? Calls and texts are governed by a litany of different laws, right? You have CMS laws for Medicare, Medicaid. You have TCPA, which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act under the FCC. You have the telemarketing sales rule under the FTC. You have the campaign register, TCR. You have HHS for healthcare type things. You have different state level rules, right, for telemarketing and for collection. So there's a really nasty patchwork of rules, regulations, laws, best practices that a company has to navigate to do texts or calls. And what happens is because it is so confusing and conflicting, most legal teams relegate their business owners to doing the lowest common denominator, which
mm.
is, a phone call, right? Or maybe a push text message that's not very engaging because they know that, one text, one day, whatever it is, they can get it so it follows all the laws. Holding a long tail conversation and doing text and calling and, responding to people, it's just hard to do while following all the rules and regulations. And I'll give you a practical example. So bill pay reminders, right? Like to do a bill pay reminder saying that a bill is coming up, you're allowed to mention the amount of the bill, right? Because it's not a collection yet. It's just a bill that's coming up. The moment that bill is due, the very next day, In many states, I think it's like 23 or 24 states, you're not allowed to do what's called third-party disclosure, which is essentially mentioning that there's a debt or a bill due, right? So you would have to say like, hey, we need to talk about your account, right? In other states, you're allowed to mention the bill, right? It's not a problem. In Massachusetts, you're only allowed to reach out 3 times within 1 week about something that could be considered a debt collection. In a lot of states, they follow the 777 collection rule. So you can only reach out 7 times within 7 days. So there's just like all these different rules, federal, state, that you have to be able to follow depending on the use case, right? Is it collections? Is it healthcare related? Is it marketing? Is it administrative, informational in nature? And depending on the level of consent that you have, was it an inquiry? Do you have permission to contact? Have you been given prior express permission? Have you been given prior express written consent? It's just it's a terrible thing to try to organize around. We in Drips, we've actually built it into what we call the DRE or the Drips rules engine. So we have a system that's essentially policy by code to make sure that everything that's coming out of our system on behalf of our clients is compliant at every level, right? Their policies, state, federal, and all those different rules. So different members will have a different experience based on where they are, based on what the consent level is. So the short answer is it's hard, right? I mean, that's like it, in a nutshell, it's hard to do it well in a deterministic fashion while following all the rules. So therefore, we stick to what's safe, right? We stick to email, direct mail, phone calls, and the diminishing returns are hitting, right? Like people, like you said, you're not picking up your call at all. That's a lot of people. I think that's like we did a study recently. I think like 80% of people, something like that, just won't pick up unknown callers. So times are changing. People are getting around to this as a methodology. They're seeing the lift from just doing push text message. So they're trying to do better by turning that into a conversation. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but we feel like ours is superior.
Fantastic. Let's talk the other hard thing, which is scale. I get a text message from my dentist, and I think it's actually a human being. They're actually just talking to me. And I'm not sure it's AI, but either way, that works fine for a dentist's office. But you get into millions of users, that changes the game. How do you scale to that sort of magnitude?
You just nailed it. I mean, it probably is a human, right? So there's that's one of the ways to do it is one-to-one, because then you're not regulated the same way. There's a lot less rules when you're hand texting somebody, and that does work for SMBs, right? That's why we don't sell SMBs candidly. But yes, you're right. At scale, if it's a high value, high volume problem, there are not many ways to do it well, right? There's dialers, there's drips, there's companies that would like to compete with us that do more one way. But I think one way, and when I say one way, I mean it's either a chatbot type thing or it's a push alert. Those are really good for high volume, low value, right? So if you think of a quadrant, right, you got low volume, low value, which is like web chat, inbound support. You have high volume, high value, which is what we're talking about, which is essentially usually us or a call center, somebody that is staffed out, because these are high value people and it's a big volume. So that's why there's a multi-billion-dollar industry around BPOs, right? Then you have the low value, high volume, which is alerts, notifications, right? So, let's use a good example. A gate change, right? Like gates change all over the place. United's probably sending tens of thousands of these things out a day, but it's not a high value use case, because Evan, if you get a text saying that your gate changed, guess what you're going to do? You're going to get your butt up and you're going to move to the gate that you need to move to, right? When it's high value, that's because it's something that enterprise needs, right? It's something that we need you to get a comprehensive medical review. We need you to do your Medicaid redetermination. We need you to do a health risk assessment. These are things that members or prospects wouldn't do, or wouldn't do otherwise, or wouldn't do as quickly as the enterprise would like them to, had it not been for the call center reaching out, had it not been for Drips reaching out, right? If it's something the customer wants to do or needs to do, right, finish an insurance claim, do a refund, dispute something, they're going to do it, right? There's many softwares out there, thousands of different chatbots and web support type softwares. But when it's something that the enterprise wants the consumer to do, that's much more difficult, right? And it's a lot harder to convince them to take those actions.
Got it. And what is the role for human in the loop in best of class AI and automation? Different philosophies there. Well, what is yours?
I think we have a really high confidence score. I think it's something like it's either 99 or 98. I should know that.
Mhm.
Where if it's below that, meaning our system, our NLP and modeling score is not 99 or 100% sure that we know the intent of the user, we send it to a human to review. They essentially assign what the correct intent should be. That then re-informs the model, right? So many years ago, it was, probably 60-40 humans. Now, out of all the outreach our system does, I think less than 1% or 2 is a human that's essentially assigning and training the model, because we've done so many of these, right? We've done billions and billions of text messages. So we've just candidly kind of seen all the different rebuttals and different ways people will say things. But
Mm.
human in the loop is really important. I mean, like, you think of that doctor's office, right? So maybe they have an alert that goes out when your, time for your cleaning is coming up every however many months, right? But when you respond back, because they probably don't have, really strong AI or NLP types of systems, maybe that's when a human in the loop is there, when they got a
Mm.
secretary responding. Problem at big scale is you're just shifting a call center from being on the phone to a call center being on keyboards, right? And that's still a really costly thing. So certain things aren't ready for our types of automation yet, like really nuanced conversations about um, medical type issues. That needs to be done through a secure channel, so we don't do that over text message. But scheduling things, reminding people, getting them to show up to things, making sure they understand what's important, helping them along their healthcare journey, is we've pretty much cracked that code.
Brilliant. Speaking of cracking code, there's no textbook about best practices here. What advice do you give a CMO, maybe a CIO who's knows their outreach sucks but doesn't know how to get started? What is a way to get started for
Yeah,
wherever they are in the journey?
that's a great question. My favorite way to get started, like a lot of companies are doing great with calls already, right? A lot of companies are doing some texting, right? So I like to tell people to try to marry those two things. Um, so they use texting generally for alerts, right? Like, hey, we need you to do a thing. They treat it as a direct response, which again I think is not a good use of the channel. I think you need to hold conversations to asynchronously take somebody down a journey for days or weeks. But if you don't have that type of technology, you don't have a tool like Drips at your disposal, then why not marry the awareness that a text brings with the efficiencies and scale that a call center brings? And the way you do that is by priming. So you send a text message first, right? Hey, Evan, this is your healthcare provider. We're going to be calling you here in a minute to talk about scheduling your annual wellness visit. This is important for XYZ, right? That alone, that one text message alone, I would almost guarantee could, increase your pickup rate or
Mm.
your contact rate by 20, 30, sometimes even 50%, right? Because at least now the person is aware, and you can play with that, right? You can say, hey, we're going to try to call you in 15 minutes, right? Or 10 minutes. So now the person gets to maybe stop doing what they're doing, put the kid away, take a walk from the office, whatever it may be, and take your phone call, right? Where before, if it was just a phone call, they're not picking it up, right? So that's an easy way to get started, But there are partners and platforms out there that specialize in this, that are single focus, best in breed, like Drips. Um, I think the best way to get started is look at what others are doing. Look at the case
Mm.
studies and test these types of technologies. Like I said, Gen AI isn't there where big companies are, ready to uh, trust it, essentially.
Mm.
But there are, deterministic ways. Even if you start with a chatbot type technology, that's better than nothing, right? It's better than phone
Right.
calls, in my opinion. But if you can find a conversational outreach partner like Drips or test out that type of thing, I think that's a great place to start.
Brilliant. And for your more advanced practitioners, customers of yours, they must be seeing some pretty incredible ROI in terms of revenue, attrition, retention. You have any anecdotes or stories there? What do you typically see on the
Oh,
investment they're making?
yeah, it's been great. I mean, we have a lot of case study. It's been really exciting. I'm trying to think of some. One of the most one a recent one that was really exciting and will be important in a couple years. So we do a lot of work around stars. So this is
Mm,
how these plans are rated, right? And they have many different measures, right? How many people are doing health risk assessments? How many people are doing comprehensive medical reviews? How many people are doing medication? How many people are medication adherent, right? They're picking up and taking their medicine. We
mm,
were able to increase one group's one of the big national payers their stars by I believe a full point in all their contracts. Essentially, all the
mm,
states they moved from a 3 to a 4 point just because of our work in comprehensive medication reviews. We also have started doing digital assets where we're building out essentially endpoints to help do surveys for these payers, these insurance companies. So we do health risk assessments now. So we were able to show, I believe it was a 10x
wow.
response on health risk assessments. So instead of getting a few percent, they're getting, upwards of 30% of people. And these are hard to reach audiences. These are the people that don't pick up the phone, don't do the direct mail, don't get the email. So it's been very compelling. I really do believe that when you give people a voice and you're able to understand what they're saying back and you're able to pivot and, adjust the conversation to meet them where they're at, while still nurturing them for days or weeks. Like I said, the average conversation takes more than a week, right? So this is
Mm,
not a direct response, hammer them till they pick up. It's a very nuanced, relationship that you build with these members so that you can be empathetic and so that you can really understand, where they're coming from while helping them get to where you need them to be.
wonderful. Well, tech for good and helping a much underserved area of the consumer. Well, congratulations on all the success, AC. Thanks for joining and sharing the vision.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Evan. I appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for listening and watching. And check out our new TV show, yeah, broadcast TV, that is, this techimpact.tv starting this Saturday. Thanks.